There is value if you position yourself in a different way, that if you have a different profile and if you work different than other people. There is also risk if you do this, right? If you are different, some people will not like you, but some people might love how you work. Personally, I think being different at the end is only gonna provide you well in the future. Maybe you face certain situations in which you might be a bit disappointed with the outcome that you get, but overall, and if you look back, I always think that we should be kind of unique in how we work and how we think about our work. We easily work as messengers of our users. We have to be aware that this is robotic. This is robotic work that machines can take over very soon. We should start understanding a bit deeper and doing different work that provides unique understanding of our users to our teams. So we make a product that is different, or we provide the insights or foundations to create products that can be different in the world and get distance from the competition. Hi, this is Marc, and this is my design story. My background is in product design, but approximately 12 years ago, I switched from product design to research. And that happened because I went as an intern to work with PepsiCo in Turkey, and I didn't know much about research back then. For me, research was like, for example, if I had to design the packaging of a yogurt, I was going to the supermarket and I was checking other yogurts to see how they were designed and understand a little bit about the products, right? The competition of, or what was in the market. But then when I was in Turkey, I discovered the real face of research, or what I think is the real face of research. We were designing cookies for women in Turkey. Women in Turkey, they have this ritual that is called the tea occasion. Every 2, 3, or 4 weeks, they meet and they chat. They chat about their concerns, they chat about their ideas, about their family issues, or the day-to-day life. And PepsiCo thought that it was a really good moment to introduce a product there, right? Because there's a lot of chatting, but there's also a lot of eating and a lot of drinking. What we did is we were going with this woman to buy food, we were cooking with them, we were setting the table with them, we were chatting, we were eating, and we were cleaning with them. So the whole research exercise was lasting sometimes 4 hours. And then we were going back to the studio and we were brainstorming about what we saw, and we were exchanging the stories of this woman. This is when I fell in love with research, and this is when I decided to move from design to research, because I found that it was way more insightful and enlightening, at least for me, to see all these rituals and intimate aspects of human beings, and at the same time becoming super creative about what we could do to fit in those stories and to fit in those lives. After being in Turkey and being a student in Delft, I joined an agency, and this agency was driven by the same guy that was running those workshops, those interesting research around the world. So for me, this is what I was doing design. I didn't know further. I didn't know other experiences in research and design. So for me, that was design. And then I switched from the agency world to product team. I joined tech. And then I saw that all these notions that I acquired in the last years didn't exist. People didn't think that way. And I was initially questioning, like, why did I have so clarity in my head that this is what research is about? But now people see things very differently. Is it that I'm wrong, or is it that they are wrong, or what's going on here, right? I think that was the first trigger to start thinking about this, and if there is something that I could do about it. And then after realizing that there was a lot of value from this approach and from this way of thinking, this mindset, and I started working on, okay, how can I make this sense or this feeling that I have, how can I make it tangible and communicate it to other people? And this is how my journey about this topic started. A lot of self-reflection, a lot of writing, and a lot of mapping and understanding what was the gap between this way of working that I learned in the past and the way of working that I usually see in tech. I see two problems in the UX teams that I see nowadays. I think one problem is in research, and another problem is in design or the creation of products. The problem that I see in research is that we are easily confused, or we easily work as messengers of our users. We should start understanding a bit deeper and doing different work that provides unique understanding of our users to our teams. So we make a product that is different, or we provide the insights or foundations to create products that can be different in the world and get distance from the competition. The problem that I see in design is that a lot of times we design to avoid hatred, but we don't design to create love. So for example, if a product behaves really well, it's really fast, it's very reliable, it's really easy to understand, you will not hate it. Definitely you will not hate it. But that doesn't mean you are going to love the product. Products that you love, they have something that connects with you. And there is no other way to connect with people than understanding people. I think there is something very important that we have to consider when we work in tech, on the product teams. And it's for me the differentiation of, do you want to create a product that makes money, or do you want to create a product to make money? For me, what I think is important is that if you want to create a product that makes money, you need to surround yourself with product experts, people that know how to develop product. But if you want to create a product to make money, then I think it's a different set of skills that you need around you. You need people that know about business, that they know how to make money as soon as possible and as much as possible. We have to understand, is the product the outcome or the means to get somewhere? And depending on the role of the product that plays, then we also need to understand, is this a company or agency that I want to join? Or this is the team that I need around myself and to be surrounded with to reach to that outcome. In this story, Create with Meaning, I'm going to cover 3 topics. The first topic is about the why. Finding your why is finding your passion. I believe it's difficult to know what you want to work on, what is the value that you want to provide without having this self-awareness. There are many other means you can follow to gain this self-awareness, but the exercise that I propose is very accessible. You only need a pencil and a paper and half an hour, maybe 1 hour to focus on it. It's just a couple of questions to know a bit more about yourself. The other 2 topics are the how. One of them, I call them like the design principles or the research principles that I follow when I work. Those having developed from a lot of pain that I went through when working, a lot of mistakes that I have made, and seeing pattern on those mistakes. And the last one is a how as well, but it's closer to the output, it's closer to the outcome that you are pursuing. In my case, I want to create with meaning, and that is a process that I follow, or a mindset that I follow to achieve that outcome. So my first point that I want to make in this story is that how do you make yourself different? But before that, you need to understand what is driving you. A couple of years ago, I was managing a team of 7 researchers, and at the same time, we had an open role, and I was doing a lot of interviews, but this time was not with users, but with candidates to join my team. And one question that I was always often asking the candidate is, why do you like research? Most of them didn't know what to answer. So when I was asking them this question, they were like, I don't know, it's just, and I thought, wow, I see a lot of a lack of self-awareness in this people that I'm interviewing. Imagine that you have a pet, you have a dog or you have a cat, and you go to a vet, right? And you have this conversation. Why did you become a pet? Oh, I love animals. Like, okay, of course you love animals. Otherwise, yeah, like I love them too, but I'm not a pet, right? As researchers, I think we are really used to do research with other people, but we don't do much research with ourselves. And there are a couple of questions that I think are really good to be asked to yourself. One question is, what are the skills of the people that you admire? And the other question is, what activities outside your work you love engaging with? And for the first question, it doesn't have to be like what people do you admire and what are the skills of those people. It doesn't have to be real people. Like in my case, when I asked this question to myself, there were like family and friends, there were colleagues, but there were also fictional characters. Like for example, I kind of like Star Wars a little bit, and I thought, wow, Jedi's are someone that I admire. So what are the skills? And it can be soft skills. what are the skills of the Jedi? So what are the skills of Indiana Jones, right? People that you admire even if they don't exist. I know it might sound a bit childish, but I think we all, most of us at least, I believe, we have the child inside of us. So for example, from Jedi's, what I admire is that they have this temper, right? They are always calm and rational about how they approach challenges. And something that I admire about Indiana Jones is that he's very creative and curious. But those are the skills that I love. And those are the skills that I want to acquire and I want to keep growing. At the same time, if I think about friends or family, you might admire your partner, or you might admire your siblings or your parents. And then what are the skills that you see in there? And I think you have to take a piece of paper, write the name of the person, and start drawing all the skills. And once you have done this with 5 or 6 people, you will start seeing patterns. The same way we see patterns when we do interviews with users or research with users, you will see patterns about yourself. The same with activities. So, for example, I love drawing. I like drawing because I can create, I can imagine, I can get myself into the stories or lives of the characters that I draw, right? I get out of my world and I get into another world which is more fantasy. Once you put all of this together, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to feel weird, and it's going to feel awkward at the beginning, you will gain a lot of self-awareness about you, what is driving you, and how this is connecting with your profession. I have done this a couple of times, and my recommendation would be that you do this every year. So every year, what you admire and what is driving you evolves as everything else in life, and map it, and keep building on your principles and what is important for you. So the second point is about the UXR principles that I follow. Those are guidelines that help me to produce and to stay in track in what I believe is important when you work. I didn't follow any specific process to come up with it. I have made a lot of mistakes when I was working, and I saw patterns on those mistakes and I learned from them. So I came up with 5 principles. The first one is nourish with empathy. In my opinion and in my belief, we have to communicate humanness. When we create an output for other people to read, when we create an output for other people to consume, it needs to feel like human. We need to convey the tension that people feel when they interact with a product or when they go through a specific experience. But it's also about how you craft your outputs. Like, for example, something that I follow sometimes is wants versus needs versus likes. If we think about it, needs are needs. Like, if you need coffee in the morning to work well, you have to realize that with no coffee, there is no good work, right? So coffee is essential. Coffee is a need. Needs will always outweigh the wants and the likes. Wants are more goals that you have in life. For example, I want to have good coffee in the morning before working. It's something that you want to have. It might be a goal. Like, if I have good coffee, I will work well. And then you have likes, which I like coffee in the morning. It's a preference. Usually that helps you to have a hierarchy in your output. So you have needs, which are tensions or human aspects that are very important, essential for them. Then you have wants, which are goals and aspirations that you have in life, but are one step below the wants. And then you have likes, things that are nice to have, but they are not essential. You'll find these different needs, and you don't know how to prioritize them. And some of them, sometimes we see them, that they collide and they are somehow forming dilemmas. Well, you can follow this approach of needs, wants, and likes to prioritize and to communicate your outputs in a more humane way. The second principle that for me is important that we consider is that the researching is sampling. There is a silly story that I always share about this. Like, if you ask me, Marc, can you do research and tell me what is the weather in Barcelona? I will look up and say, I'm going to do an exhaustive research about, and today the sky is blue, there is no clouds, or we saw some clouds there, and we had this temperature, and the wind was that strong, etc., etc. And I can be a very exhaustive research exercise of what is the weather in Barcelona, but it's just going to be out of one day. That doesn't mean that the weather in Barcelona is always like this. It was like that day. The same thing happens with research. You do an exercise of research. You have to be aware that that is a sample. That is not how the world is. This is not truth. It's a sample that you got, and this is the output of that sample. So when you find yourself, when you see other people saying, we already have done research about this. You have to consider that research, but that research is not true. It was a sample. But that's why there are certain exercises that I always advise that you do it often. Like, for example, if you want to measure satisfaction over a product, many companies, they do it month by month because it fluctuates. Same with many other things. The third one is initiate and iterate. One big mistake that I did happened because the CPO of a company asked me, can you create the value proposition of the app? We don't know where the app is going, and we need to create a new value proposition that is more profitable and more successful for the company. And I said, wow, okay, let's focus on this. And I did a planning with all my research questions on the approach, how I was going to do it. And then we agreed that I was going to need 2 quarters. So 1 quarter to finding the qualitative output of this value proposition, and 1 Q to quantify it. We agree on this. So I think I proposed to run between 20 and 35 interviews, something like this, like a lot of interviews with different stakeholders, different profiles, to get that qualitative output that I needed. After 2 months, the CBO came to me and he said, how are you doing with the project? And like, well, I'm in the middle of it. Like, okay, can you wrap it up in 1 week? And I was like, what? Can I wrap it up in 1 week? No, I cannot wrap it up in 1 week. Okay. And then I found myself in a very difficult situation, saying, okay, I have conducted like 20 interviews, but the analysis is halfway through, and I don't know how can I wrap it up in one week. My advice is never do this. Even if you agree with the CEO, CPO, the king of your country, whoever, never do this. If you have a plan of 40 interviews, okay, you can do 40 interviews, but do 6 or 5, do analysis, create an output, 5 or 6 more, 8 or maximum 10. And then you do analysis, you create the output, and you do another iteration and another iteration and another iteration. If someone comes to you and asks, hey, can you wrap it up in 1 week? Yes, I can. That was the whole plan. We are not going to fulfill the whole plan. We are going to do 30%, 40, 60% of it. But from this 30%, this is the output that we have. The fourth one is stay in the problem. And this is, for me, probably the most important one. Staying in the problem is difficult. Staying in the problem is awkward. Staying in the problem is a place where you don't want to be. You want to stay in the solution, right? Solution is fun. Solution is, it creates outputs, creates outcome, brings revenue. The problem is annoying. But the problem is where it provides you this strategic mindset. So a lot of times what I see is, Marc, you have done an amazing research, but you didn't define the action to take. And I do this on purpose. But I want you to be in love with the problem. I want you to understand the problem. And I want you to live in the problem. Imagine the problem is a mountain and you are at the top, right? You can see how the solutions are performing according to your problem. If you live in the solution, you lose perspective of what was the problem. You live in the solution, and you just fall in love with the solution. You have to fall in love with the problem. And then see how the solutions perform against your problem. And this is especially difficult for researchers and designers because we have to be there, especially researchers. We have to be always there. When we lose perspective of the problem, we stop having, or we have chances to stop having, strategic thinking on how to improve that product or make that business decision. We always hear very, very often, you have to make insights that are actionable, but you have to inspire action. And this is the 5th principle. You have to inspire action in your insights. You can make very actionable insights, but if they are boring, if the report is too long, if they don't move inside you, it doesn't matter how actionable they are. You need to inspire people to take that action. So you have to make sure, whether it's that through your story, through your visuals, through your provocative language, whatever is the skill that you have, and whatever is the path that you want to follow to get there. Make them live your session, make them live whatever that happened, the session, the meeting, the workshop, make them live that they want to work on this problem. And this is the only thing that they want to do, that they are motivated and they feel like, yes, I want to do this. Not just they know what to do, but they are driven to do it. The third point about my design story is actually how you create with me. How do you make outputs that are different? creating outputs that are just a deck with 20 slides with 20 different insights that we say 4 out of 5 users said this is robotic work and it can be boring. So what if we create different outputs? Research is not about doing interviews. Research is about what happens after doing the interviews or after doing the research. How you analyze this data is the most important aspect of your research. So research for me is everything from the moment that you get the challenge from the client or from your stakeholder. How do you challenge that challenge, or how do you understand that challenge? How do you design the approach? How do you select the methods? How do you conduct the interview or the methods that you want to execute or to run? But then the analysis and synthesis of the data is a crucial part. For me, there are two different moments. One moment is the analysis. The analysis is when you get, for example, one interview, you get this output of that interview, the translation, and you start highlighting everything that you think is important from that interview. Synthesis is a collection of all the analysis from all the interviews or all the diaries or all the surveys that you have, all the answers from the surveys that you have done, right? Two different moments, two different efforts. When we do synthesis, a lot of times we just follow intuition. We just do affinity. Why do we select methods to execute the interviews, for example, or the diaries? But we don't select any method. Very often we don't select any method for the synthesis. Sometimes we do. Like, for example, if you make a journey, you are selecting a method. If you create personas, you select a method. But besides 2 or 3 methods that we see very often, usually we really lack on richness about these methods. I have no idea how much time I have invested to look for different methods out there, and I didn't find many. And after a lot of frustration of looking for these methods, what I thought is, okay, I think I have to create them myself. And I found a lot of inspiration from mental models. Mental models is a simplification of how you think something works out there, something works in the real world. Like, for example, if you want to design a microwave, the mental model is you open the door, you put the food inside, you close the door, you set up the temperature, you set up the power, and you push the button. If you want to design a microwave that works differently, it's going to be very difficult for you to do it, right? People think microwaves work like this. We have millions of different mental models. Some of them apply in different situations. But for example, one that I really like are the forces of jobs to be done. You have on one side one force, which is pushing. And on the other side, you have another force, which is pulling, right? So what is pushing you away from the current situation and what is pulling you away from the future situation? At the same way, what is pulling you to the current situation and what is pushing you away from the new situation? I'm going to put a very clear example. If you launch a rocket to the sky, the Earth is pulling the rocket down, right? But the fuel is pushing the rocket upwards. And then we have to see who's going to win. Is it going to win the fuel or is the Earth going to win? And depending on the winner, the rocket is going to go down to the Earth or the rocket is going to go up to the space. This is the working principle of that rocket. We can take this principle or this mental model and apply it to our research. Imagine that you want to know what is going to be the perception of people about a new product, and you would radically want to improve the current product. So what if you have a prototype with a new product or a vision of the new product and a prototype, or people are familiar with the current product, and you start asking them, what is pulling you towards the new product and why? And what is keeping you from the current product and why? And you understand these forces of pulling and pushing, and then you get to these unique conversations with your users, but at the same time, you will have a framework in which later on you can use for your synthesis and to reach this unique understanding of that situation. And now the tricky question is, how do you come up with these frameworks? From real life. Time, for example, or gravity are factors that are very stable and we can take as inspiration to create those mental models. Let's take gravity, for example. Gravity is the attraction of an object towards a planet, right? Or towards another object with more mass. Imagine that you take one object and it can be, let me think about something. Well, the bottle. And you take the bottle for the user and you put it in the middle of a piece of paper. And you tell them, okay, how do you get to this bottle? What's the story behind this bottle? And you start understanding the life of that person around that bottle. right? That bottle, of course, should be relevant for your research purpose. But you create a unique understanding of that person and the relationship with that bottle. Like having different questions and also different ways of how you can analyze those interviews later on and create outputs that have meanings. And again, some people will love it, some people will hate it, but it's not going to be as boring as a standard as many other people work, right? You're going to have an output that is yours and that is unique and that is going to somehow differentiate and create your own brand. I want you to invite to take advantage of those moments in life in which something feels off. Like, for example, in my case, when I moved from the agency world to designing in-house team world, and I found myself like I was working different than many other people. And that was a very important point in my life to reflect and to think, like, what can I do about this? I didn't take any action back then. I think I was not ready to take many actions, but I still have that moment very clear in my head, right? It was a really good moment for reflection, which I didn't take advantage of. But I think now if I would have the same feeling, I would do it. I have another story, like for example, the one that I shared with the CPO, right? He needed results and I was working on my project and I was working according to the plan. It's just I didn't follow the right principle to make sure that I was positioning myself in a successful place. So those moments that you have in life, although they might be painful because some of them will be, are really important moments for you to reflect and to take advantage of them and to learn from them. Some of them are going to give you very good learnings, while others might not be as insightful or as inspiring for you to get any conclusion. Another one that I had is when I started working as a manager, I didn't know what to do. I thought, wow, how am I going to be a manager? And I was talking to a coach. We had a lot of chats that it was about me and how I felt and what it was moving me, etc., etc. And that also was a really trigger or important point in my life to start thinking and to start writing about how I felt. If you follow this advice, I think you will get the fruits of taking time to reflect. Writing helps you to achieve more clear thinking. When you talk, it's very easy that we mumble, that we say things that they go nowhere because they are easily covered by the next sentence that we say. But when you write, there is no place to hide bad thinking. Things need to be clear. So even if there is no one else reading your writings, it's going to help you to think clearly. And this is an insight that I got from Shane Parrish. He has a fantastic podcast about, it's called The Knowledge Project. And I think he recently published a book, which is Clear Thinking. I really advise you to check his work. I find it very inspiring. But the point is, write it, take the time, reflect, write, draw, whatever is the means that it works for you, and take the fruits of all that time invested in knowing yourself, knowing what is the value that you want to provide out there, and how do you make sure that you are unique and different in providing that value.